Welcome to episode 13 of the End Product Podcast. This week, joining me and Stish, we have got Professor Techers, and as we come on recording, we're talking about the kind of the false dawn that was the community announcement on Wednesday. I think there was a little kind of thing that came out from Nicholas in the Discord, or somebody intimated that it was going to be like 25% of it was going to be around football or something. I had no expectations around football, but it was all baseball, and we're just maybe talking about some of the stuff that the baseball announcement might signify or foreshadow, maybe something we might see further down the road. One thing I thought, Techers, just on the note of what you were talking about on that, I thought was quite good from baseball, that if they were to reverse engineer it back into football, is like some of these positions on the SO7 seem to cover like a few positions on the pitch, and maybe, you know, they're talking about tech that might be able to come across or whatever. Maybe they could eventually differentiate between fullback and centre back, for example, or like winger and striker, that kind of thing. If that's maybe another tech thing that they maybe now have access to, I don't know.
That could be interesting, yeah. Instead of like the extra player, you could have like a wide player. That'd be quite interesting.
That's the question as well, is should there be a different scoring matrix? That was one of the things I noticed about the baseball. Is obviously there's quite an intricate scoring matrix per position. I know there'll be definitely people in favour and against, but should fullbacks be scored differently to centre backs? That's the question. I think for me, I didn't actually go into it with any expectation of football. I just was like intrigued to know what they've been working on and what they're building. I think the sort of geek in me was reading between the lines in a lot of what was shared and thinking, okay, well, what tech have they built for this, and how could that potentially improve the football product in the future? One of the things I think I found quite interesting there was two. The first one was around the concept of the game week closing or locking when the first match kicks off, which could be really interesting. I think it's very different from rolling locks, which the community have talked about in the past. But, that would essentially create the idea of a flexible deadline, which, imagine that what would happen if there was a deadline for setting your Asia team or your Champ Europe team, and the Champ Europe team was maybe a couple of hours later, and that gave you the opportunity to listen to the European press conferences that normally take place on a Friday morning. There's little things like that I don't think fundamentally shift the gameplay in favor of one group of people or another, but it would be, I think, quite interesting to think about that as a potential option, whereby you might have a few extra hours to set the team should you so wish to.
Yeah, the thing I found really interesting about that is we would probably then suggest that global and under 23 would probably log on the first just match, and that would be global, like, just in whatever. But it does give you that extra reward for playing maybe the region that might be seen as being harder. But if you can come in with that intel of knowing that, the striker is going to play, or this guy didn't make training, you hear the press conferences like you were saying for the European games, because they came out between like 11 and 1 on like the Friday normally. And if the first game on a Friday night, what we're talking about, 7 o'clock for a Bundesliga game or something, gives plenty of like normal average Joe, the man in the street player, finishes work, come back, what's the news, get up to scoop with everything. First game's at 7, game week kicks off, you've got a few hours to kind of live your life, if you like, and then get into the game week, which I think if you're in that territory, in that region, that'll be the same for everyone in America and Asia, respectively, in their time zones, that's class.
Absolutely. So I think that's one of the big challenges. One of what I hear a lot from friends that are playing the game in the States is that a lot of the time they're having to get up super, super early to set their teams, because we are closing the game week when Asia, we need to close it for Asia. And it is truly a global game, but it does, I feel like this as an idea could be quite interesting without adding a significant lift on the user. One of the big drawbacks, I think, with a rolling lock is that you are then wedded to your phone or your computer all weekend looking for any like smidgen of information that might give you an advantage, which will definitely benefit one group of users over another. Whereas I feel like the idea of having a couple of extra hours and, whatever time the first game kicks off, that's when it closes. That's what you know. I don't know. I think it maybe adds something to it. But yeah, one for discussion. Maybe that was just me reading between the lines too much of, watching the talk and not thinking, oh, baseball, I'm not interested, but thinking, oh, what have they built for baseball that might work for football?
I think that's one thing that's quite interesting when you think about it. Obviously, we've spoken just there about the baseball game and what they might do. I think one thing that we haven't seen in terms of like improvements or tweaks in a while, or actually like in general for quite a while now, is we haven't seen much change to like the scoring matrix or the gameplay. We've seen like improvements in sort of like new game modes and ways to win, and like we've seen like the kind of onboarding experience changed a little bit, and even like the lobby, like the way that teams are selected. But we haven't seen any tweaks, to my knowledge, on the scoring matrix or anything like that. Like we've had discussions down the years about things like big chance missed is like the classic one. It's a little bit objective, and it kind of depends on like who the opta person is watching the game and stuff like that. And I just wondered, do any of you expect to see sort of gameplay tweaks? I think if they're going to do it, you'd normally expect to see or hear of that maybe before all of the European divisions kind of reopen. What are your thoughts on that? Like, are we expecting to see any of those anytime soon, you think?
I thought the time for it was like now. I was actually doing a member stream when the thing happened, and we were having a wee chat about it just in the warm up for it, and that's what I was thinking is like, yeah, game week like 296 or so, kind of when all the big European games come back, is like a month from now, and if there was going to be any significant pre-European, new European season changes, you've got to think they'd have to give us about a month's notice, 4 weeks notice. You'd think, so. Surely the time is nigh.
Yeah, I think so as well. Like the fact that we haven't heard anything, like a scoring tweak affects the market as well, though, doesn't it? That's the thing, is like they would have to give you plenty of notice on something like that. A little bit like they did with the goalkeeper rule coming in, like not being able to use commons. They gave us that months and months in advance, and I think that if they were going to tweak the scoring matrix around, like possession lost for fullbacks, or if we were going to get into like wide players, those kind of positional tweaks, or even other things like like bigger things like decisive actions, like if they decided on the way penalties won, if you get a penalty won but then the player misses the pen, then that's taken away. But if they score it, then they get the points for penalty won, but they still won the penalty whether the player misses it or not. So I think little things like that, it's just like I feel like there are places that could potentially be tweaked that we haven't seen yet. But yeah, definitely, I'm starting to get that vibe now that we're going to have another season, at least another year maybe, before we see any of those major kind of scoring matrix tweaks.
Well, what Tecker said earlier on had me thinking, with the baseball one, maybe there will be like a new kind of separate matrix for maybe even goalkeepers. We'll just get a completely new matrix, and they have a wee bit more of a fairer crack at the whip, maybe. What do you think on that positional kind of take on it, Techers?
So for me, I think it's quite interesting when you look at it, because I sort of dive into the Opta feed and actually what comes across. So I think I have an idea of like what could be possible. And the one that really interests me is possession lost relative to the position on the pitch. So if you think about it at the moment, we have the concept of a final third pass, and you get extra points for the completion of a final third pass. So by that logic, I would love to see the concept whereby the possession loss it's a reduced penalty if the possession is lost in the final third. And the reason I say that, and in goalkeepers, it pains me greatly. Because goalkeepers, if you think about it, they get 3 points for a save. Maybe they get a couple extra points if it's a dive save or save inside the box. All it takes is 3 goal kicks, and they've wiped out a save. So there's nothing that pains me more than like if you've got an Asian goalkeeper and they are instructed to play it long from the goal kick, and they're lumping it up to a forward who's never ever going to win it in the air. You just see points leaking away for the entire game when you're watching it. And the reason I say this is because I think what Sorare have to be very, very careful of is not favouring one position heavily over another. Because the moment that they announce this, there's going to be people like myself who are like, oh, hang on a minute, I know exactly who that's going to benefit. And you watch the market shift within minutes. So I think you've got to be very careful to not suddenly make it that fullbacks are meta, for example. But then that's why I quite like this, because I wouldn't ever say just reduce possession lost, because if someone's giving it away on the edge of their own box, then absolutely they deserve to be punished. But at the same time, like long goal kicks or crosses where the forward's gone up for a 50-50 and the defender's just won it, and you know that your players then that's delivered that cross in has just got a -1. I feel that you could get a much more balanced scoring matrix and a fairer scoring matrix if the possession lost was considered. And the reason I suggest this is because Opta has the data. It's not like a pie in the sky suggestion. It's something that could feasibly be implemented. Because if you look at goalkeepers, their upside is significantly capped, and it is incredibly frustrating when you see goalkeepers that like put in an absolute worldie of a performance. Maybe they've made like 5 saves, but then they've taken 15 goal kicks and end up with an AA of like 3. And you're just like,
yeah, nightmare.
So gutting. Yeah, because a goalkeeper can like literally like that decisive is massive for goalkeepers at the moment, isn't it? Like, I think I was sat watching Tanny like into the last sort of 5-10 minutes of the game recently, and had a great game, and also so happened to Jo Hyun Woo in his last game as well. Had a great game, conceded in like the third to last minute, and then you're just seeing like that loss of decisive plus like a shot not saved, plus like you lose the decisive, but you also lose about 7 points on top of that decisive that are equated to like missing a shot on target or like a missed save or all the other things that come with it. Yeah, there's loads of little things I'm sure that can be tweaked. But like you said, if the Opta stats are there and they're being recorded, then there's like it's not pie in the sky. There must be other ways. So like from your experience of looking at these Opta feeds, is every loss of possession recorded in like what third of the field it is happened in? Yeah.
As part of the feed, you get the data of where the pass was originated and where the pass was completed. So it's a derived metric from that. So like when you see long ball completed or final third pass completed, it's essentially referencing the data points that show where the pass started and where the pass finished.
So out of interest then, is there a metric for a long pass completed? Like what kind of like determines if it's a long or short pass? Like does it have to pass through X amount of yards, or is it like from one sort of third of the field into the next?
I'm not exactly sure on the distance. I don't have that to hand, unfortunately. But yeah, it's like essentially a pass of a certain length, because sometimes you see it sideways as well. So like if you have a fullback that's like maybe swung the ball to the other side of the pitch, they can get a long pass even though it's still within the same third of the pitch. It's laterally moved long enough to trigger that metric.
Yeah, as a holder of Osmar and Lee Han Bomb at Seoul, like I always get excited when those big long sweeping sideways passes go. I think, is that a long pass? I'll take that if it is. Yeah. They do love a long pass across the defence, and that's part of the reason that they've been so overpowered for me in my defensive Asian sides and U23 and Lee Han Bomb's case as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like one of the things I really wanted to pick your brain on actually is, you must notice this as well, but like it gets harder and harder now where so many players we have great access to Sorare data and all of these amazing apps, and obviously the knowledge base is there on Twitter for people giving us tips and pointers on different regions and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to pick your brain about is, because you're someone who kind of dives into the stats and the Opta, has that become more and more of a thing that you feel that you need to do to identify players before it's obvious? Like if as soon as they hit the Sorare scoring matrix, you can already see like what they're doing in the games, even if they're not minted yet. Like one of the players I kind of identified a season back was Tom Hay. I was watching him for Heerenveen, and I thought, I'm going to follow this guy. As soon as his cards come, I'm having him. But by the time his cards came, he had like half a season's worth of scores, and he was hitting big scores. So his price, he was priced in as soon as he hit the market. How do you identify? Are there any things that you're looking for when it comes to like trying to identify a player who maybe hasn't really hit that matrix yet? Like in particular, I'm thinking of maybe in the U23 sense, like maybe a player who has come on for X amount of minutes, so their scores on Sorare don't look great because they've mostly hit into the like mid-20s from coming on a sub a few times. But from that time they've spent on the pitch, is there enough information for you to help determine like, right, there's a player that I think is going to have a breakout season next season. Like, what kind of things are you looking for to like give you that early signal on a player, maybe before the Sorare matrix has unveiled them to the world?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think honestly, like this is one of the things I really enjoy. And this is, when I look at my under 23 players, I've actually got quite a fairly deep gallery now of under 23 players that don't necessarily get into my SO5 lineups each week, but are in that category of I've seen something that's got me excited. And where you talk about the prices being baked in, what I find is that the sort of general population within Sorare are very, very reactive to scores on like what's recorded. And look at Sorare data and they're like, oh, what scores have they recorded in the past? I think Sorare data have actually improved their tooling a little bit in this regard, so you can filter out when did they start, which was a sub appearance, because otherwise historically people would just look at a sea of scores and go, scores are good, brilliant, I'm going to buy that guy, or oh, their scores aren't very good. So for me, Y Scout, I just absolutely love it. I'm looking at per 90 stats. So you can try and look at the adjusting for the minutes that they've been on the match, so that you're picking them up before everyone's really aware of them, because you're thinking, oh, hang on a minute, there's something about this guy. He's gone and like the per 90 figures adjusted are special if you pull them out. A couple of players I grabbed like that, Zeballos in Argentina, Boca. He was barely playing, but I looked at his per 90 stats, and they really, really stood out. Now, the moment he does get 90 minutes, he often doesn't get 90 minutes because the politics at Boca is just next level. But when he does get 90 minutes, his AA tends to be up around the sort of 20-point mark, which, if you think about that for an under 23 forward, is pretty special. So I'm looking at those per 90 stats. So I've got the sort of list that you look at per position. So for defenders, I'm looking for number of long passes. I'm looking for dual win rate, completion. Basically what triggers the big points. So I think first of all, a deep understanding of the scoring matrix really helps. Secondly, adjusting them for the time the player spent on the pitch, and thirdly is having an understanding of managerial tactics and how that impacts players. So for me, I watch a ton of Belgian football. Like, it was like my way into Sorare. I identified Belgian football as an affordable way of getting started and competing across Challenger and over under 23. I think it's a league that has a load of under 23 players always coming through. It's a bit of a feeder league for other more larger, more financially well-off leagues in Europe. So you get a real high turnover of players coming through, and I was like, that, as someone that wasn't a true early adopter, I'm sure lots of people would probably call me a relative early adopter now, but when I joined, I'm sort of trying to compete against managers that are already fairly established and thinking, okay, how can I do that? And under 23, because of the turnover, it's obviously a lot of risk. You might have a player that gets a bad transfer and suddenly they're not usable anymore. But for me coming in, I'm like, okay, well, if I can use my knowledge and my scouting to stay on top of that, it creates a really, really big advantage. And a big part of that is understanding the managerial tactics and what the role of the player is in the team. So I'll use sort of two examples here. The first one was when Philippe Clement went to Monaco from Bruges. As soon as that happened, I bought Benoit Badiashile. And the reason is that Badiashile was on my shortlist on Y-Scout of players that had that capability of long passing, of good dual win rate that's likely to trigger your double-doubles and your triple-triples and all those multipliers. And I knew that Clement, from his time at Bruges, really favours a possession-based game. He builds from the back, and his centre-backs are really important in doing that. At the time I bought him, Badiashile's scores, he was actually injured at the time, but Badiashile's scores were not too impressive whatsoever. The moment that he settled into Clement's system and they started building out from the back, I was just watching him. Like, there's one game he passed his way to 100 because of the understanding of what that player's abilities were and how do they fit within the system. Like Lihan Baum is a great example of that, because Seoul are a possession-based team. So the moment that I saw him starting, I'm thinking, okay, young centre back playing in a possession dominant team. Yes, thank you very much. Like I will sort of get involved in that. The other one, and it's been quite interesting to watch this because he's pumped for a completely different reason, is Yari Vasharen at Anderlecht. Yari has gone has been hyped to the next level in the last couple of weeks because he basically scored 5 goals in 2 games against completely pointless nothing opposition, and everyone's like, yay, he's scoring goals, and I'm like, yay, he's now playing as a number 10. And last season he was shunted out on the right wing, and he was basically decisive dependent. And this comes back to the understanding of managerial tactics. Company favoured a 4-2-2-2, where he had most of the time Leo Rafaelov and Yari Vasharen taking the wide attacking midfielder roles. That is like the kiss of death for a midfielder card on Sorare, because you're not involved in the action. You tend not to get that much possession. Your AA game is fairly limited. So I was really excited seeing Vasharen. I was watching because Mazu, who's now joined Anderlecht from Union Saint-Gilloise, he favours a 3-5-2. So straight away I was like, okay, well, that shift in formation that Anderlecht are likely to implement this off-season is going to benefit a couple of people. It's going to be the outside centre-backs, who I believe is going to be Hannes Delcroix. Wesley Hope as well, but he was a beast last season, so I just think that he's just going to be good again.
Soki, Stanley, is Stanley going to be amongst it? You reckon Stanley and Soki, is he still there next season? Actually,
oh, he's at Bruges.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
I always get Bruges and Anderlecht mixed up. The two of them, to be fair, I've done that. This is the second time on the podcast I've done that. Actually,
that's all right.
I can't remember what player we were talking about last time, but I did the exact same thing.
Yeah. But anyway, so I was going to say is that the centre backs in that formation are the ones that sort of really stood out, and I was like, whoever gets the central attacking midfield role, who is behind what's probably going to be Fabio Silva and Esposito, who are a pretty tasty attacking lineup in their own right. I was like, whoever gets that role is going to be absolutely bossing it from an SF5 perspective, because they're going to be heavily involved in linking the play from midfielder to attack. So there I was saving up my ETH thinking I'm going to grab a Yari, and then suddenly he scored a hat-trick in a friendly and everyone went nuts and piled into him. So I've kind of missed the boat on that one. But I think, when you go back to the sort of the original question of how do I identify people, it's essentially those 3 ways is looking at what is their role in the team, what does the manager play, how do you get those possession adjusted stats, and what is relevant for their position, their minted position. Because you'll see some players, they have 2 different cards minted. So then, they're going to be, one card will be favoured based on where they play on the pitch. So one example I'll give is Suslov of Groningen. I've got the forward version of his card, which is incredibly rare because most of them now are all midfielder. When he was playing as a left winger, the forward card was absolutely incredible because he's getting fewer possession lost, but the trade-off was that he doesn't get defensive actions, which was fine when he was playing as a left winger because you're getting, you're more likely to get higher possession loss than you are defensive actions. Last season, halfway through the season, they shifted him to defensive midfielder, which I was like, oh, damn it, that's just fully swung him back into the midfielder card is better. And then this pre-season, he's been playing as left back. So I've been holding on to this card that I'm thinking, you know what, actually, this is a great, talented young player. I've got the rarer version of the card. All he needs to do is play in one of those attacking 3 beyond the lone striker. And every season, the manager's moved him further and further back so that the midfielder card is probably going to be the better one. Because if you look at the example I'll use is Mauro Junior at PSV. He's a midfielder card, but he was playing left back for most of last season. You've also got Obliakov as well at CSKA, who's a midfielder card that plays at left back. That tends to work really well. Forward card at fullback, not so well. João Mario, I think it's Mario. I'm sure it's João Mario. There's a young guy at Porto who had a forward card but was playing right back, and his scores quickly disintegrated overnight as a forward
I
card.
had one of those. I had Gabriel Goodmanson when he was at Groningen, and he played almost like as well at Groningen. He played a bit further up. He played almost like as a flying wing back, and then since he moved to Lille, he's been in and out in rotation, but he doesn't get forward very much. So his forward card pretty useless there, to be honest. Yeah, I got rid of him a while back, but yeah, he was a good example of a forward card that didn't do a lot in those sort of defensive. You mentioned Y Scout there, Quinny. I know like you've got a background in coaching, and like, have you ever used Y Scout before? Is that something that you've ever like used to kind of identify players for
Uh,
SO5?
Yeah, I've been on Wisecout for the last year and a bit or something. I normally cover it. I did cover it for the last year in like the members section of the channel, like going through the good thing about Wisecout, tickers will know as well, is you get like, good access to video clips and stuff like that. Per 90 stats are good fun as well. And one thing I've actually had a lot of fun with trying to do a bit of talent ID with on Sorare data is not just that combination of when they start and whatever, but also the variance of cards, like so midfield or forward or whatever, and then you can still go into it and change it to when the guy played centre mid, when the guy played right mid, when the guy played left winger, and you can the level of detail you can really go into now to really find out what this guy's made of and like this kind of role or like that kind of role. I think it's quite valuable. And when you know the stuff that Deckers is talking about, like the manager plays such a way, the shape will evolve to be like this, then it's just been one step ahead of the curve. That's all it is. It's probably the best edge you can get, really, in this game.
Yeah.
Definitely,
This
especially like we're
is what I
saying,
think.
especially now with all that data that you've got. Like if you can use your own head and your own thing, like eyes and mind and things, especially like managerial tactics, that is like one kind of like grey area in terms of like what is readily available to most managers on the sites that we all kind of frequent. So I think that's like a really good point that you make there, is like understanding managerial tactical kind of like ideas and philosophies, all that kind of stuff. So it's super interesting. I think it does get your brain ticking. It's so hard, but for people that do spend the time to watch the football and take it in, they will benefit from that. Especially in that U23 market, like you said, if you can identify a player like on their side, like what they're likely to do per 90 underneath the new coach, or I think that's. Now we've talked about Ten Hag's move to United on here a few times, and I think that Dallo is going to really like excel under him. But it's not many other players in our squad that I look at and think he's a Ten Hag kind of player. But watching us against Liverpool the other week, Dallo did get into the box quite a bit. So maybe he will. Maybe we will see a bit more of him this season. Be interesting to see how he does. But I think that like the signing of Malacia kind of underlined that he is going to attempt to play the Ajax way, which will be really exciting, but could be disastrous in the Prem because we could get absolutely ruined on the counter if we want to play our fullbacks like on the edge of the opposition box. But if he can get them running up and down the wing, who knows? Who knows?
I think Tottenham
You
have got
need a
incredibly
defensive
stronger.
midfielder if you want to push your fullbacks on. That's what I'm going to say. And Frankie de Jong is not a defensive midfielder. He's a brilliant midfielder, but he is not going to anchor the attacking talent and aggressive pressing of fullbacks.
No,
Not happening.
I'm looking forward to a change, but I am not. I don't. I want. We need a change. We need to kick up the arse, but I don't know what to expect. I'm still like, I watched the game the other day against Liverpool, and Liverpool looked like they'd just come back from holiday. Like you couldn't judge anything from like that performance really. One thing I did take from it was I thought Rashford looked like his turn of pace was back, which was a big plus. But other than that, there wasn't much to see. Like, and this is another thing going back to the point about Visharan and the hat trick scored at pre-season is like you can't really like the one thing that I did take from pre-seasons and like in the Russian division a few seasons back, I was kind of like following like what the young players were doing in that kind of like the winter break when they start to get their fixtures back on track, and you can see the players that are maybe coming in, and then the new mints came in like in the sort of like midway through the season in the Russian league that year, and I picked up Konstantin Chukavin off of watching like how they did in the off season in the break. But it is hard, isn't it? Like I always I'm fascinated by the goalkeeper market and looking at like who started in the friendlies. It just doesn't really give you a full view of like who's going to start. But especially been looking at like Salzburg. I don't know about either of you two, but that is a really interesting goalkeeper situation, isn't it? With Cohn and Mantle, and who's going to be the number one. But Nico Mantle has been having an absolutely outstanding pre-season, and I think he might be the number one next season. I don't know if either of you have had a chance to look or think about that one very much, but I've got a feeling he's going to start as the number one this season, which will be interesting because Cohn has had a really good season last season too.
I have Mantle. I bought him at the end of last season fairly cheaply because I thought that Cohn was going to leave. Personally, I think that Cohn will be the starter as long as he's still there. If there may be a club that makes a move for him before the end of the deadline. That's what I'm kind of keeping my fingers crossed for, because Mantle is Germany's under 21 goalkeeper, and you think about the pedigree of goalkeepers that come through the German national system. You've got to have something about you to be picked.
Yeah.
When you're not, you're Salzburg's backup keeper and you're getting picked for Germany under 21s, like that says something. Like the coaches have seen something fairly special about him. I bought him not because I think he's going to start the season. I bought him because I actually believe in his talent, and I think that it will be a matter of time before he's number one at Salzburg. I think they will respect Cohn because he won the spot last season. If you actually look before Salzburg were minted, Mantle was starting. Mantle actually started last season as number one, then Cohn won the spot and kept it. So I do feel that potentially Cohn keeps it for now, but I do also think that there's a fairly significant chance that a club might come in and make a move for him before the end of the window.
The only thing I would say on Mantle is McBride is a big fan of Mantle, and I'm pretty sure just from hanging out with McBride and chats and whatever, pretty sure Mantle, it sounded like he was sold or going to go on loan to D2 or something in Germany, and then all of a sudden it was like scuppered and scrapped. Or I don't know if it was maybe just a rumour that went quite far, but I'm pretty sure he had a transfer on or about to get done, and then it was a last minute kind of rug pull or change of position. Yeah. Something happened where he was going to go Red X, and then he didn't.
I saw that. Yeah, I read an article where they base it. The article sort of said that he'd had like sort of a chat with the board, if you like, that basically said that they can't let him go, and they want him to fight for the number one spot, and like he maybe got some assurances there that it's not a foregone conclusion. Like you could easily get that number one shirt back if you work hard, and if that was maybe a month or two back, because like you said, I think he was going to be loaned out to D2 or something like that, but his pre-season's been incredible. Some of the saves I've seen him pull off in like the last couple of games. If anyone needed to stake their claim for the beginning of the season, he absolutely has done it. So, if they did give him some assurances that like if he showed himself in pre-season, he'd get the shirt back, and that maybe because he's from looking at what he's done in the last couple of games in their friendlies, some of the saves he pulled off were unreal.
Yeah. I think he's honestly I think he's an incredibly good young goalkeeper, and I think he's got quite a high ceiling. I really do, and that was like one of the ones that there wasn't too many stats. Like we talk about like a way of identifying players. I am heavily stats based, but also sometimes you just watch a player and you think, actually there's something about this player. Like, and I'm willing to sort of stake a little bit on them, on their career. And Mantle, I think, is definitely one of those players. When you look at his style of play, like he very much models his game after Manuel Neuer. He's the kind of player, one-on-one saves, he's brilliant. He's also very quick off his line as well. So I'm thinking, if he gets to run in the Salzburg team, I'm thinking, how many sweeper keeper points is he going to pick up? That's, goalkeeper AA gold. So yeah, that's definitely like knowing what his style of play was, going, I'm happy to just grab this guy and be patient until he gets his chance.
Yeah.
I think you've always got to have a little kind of assembly line of goalkeepers like that. It's a good way of kind of having your club moving forward, through the kind of seasons. I feel like, you get a wee backup 18-year-old goalkeeper from Japan when nobody cares about Japan, and, and subsequently across Europe and whatever. And then these guys, they just pop up sometimes, And it's like, oh, this guy's playing now, then you've got a wee card you can go play with or do some trading. It's always a strategy. It's always good fun to do.
Yeah,
Mm.
I picked up a few sort of super rare under 23 keepers like that, just purely like on the off chance they get a little move or the number one moves on. And I think like if you're playing, where now I've got quite a few under 23 supers, I need to have like a super rare under 23 keeper that I can hopefully use. And I'm down to like, obviously Etienne Green went down with Saint Etienne, but I've also got Gaetan Kook, but he's into his final season of U23 this year. I've got Bake Yongbum at Saul, who's had a couple of starts this season, and I do think he'll get in. Like what I watch Saul quite a lot because I have quite a few of their players, and he did well when he played. He's actually injured at the moment, but yeah, I think that the goalkeeping position there has been like kind of like potentially like there for the taking for a season and a half or so now. And when he came in, he did really well. And he's like 20 years old. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts next season. So I've got his super. I got another one that I picked up sort of speculatively. Issam El March, who is like I think he's at RKC, but he was a former Ajax youth academy prospect. He did play against Ajax last season, but I don't think I'm going to get much utility out of him now. He doesn't seem to be kind of hitting any of that form. But those U23 goalkeeper super rares, if you're going to enter D2, especially in U23, are like, if you can get them cheaply and just sit and be patient with them. And I think that's one thing that you notice in the market maybe lacks a bit of patience when we were talking about how reactionary the market is to a couple of big scores or something, especially in the U23 market. And obviously, I've spent all summer getting offers on my Veerman, my Kenneth Taylor super rares, and nearly all the time I hear the same thing from the managers who are trying to prize them away from me: is you're going to struggle with your team. Like you should sell this card, and I'm like, I'm offended. I'm like, have you seen my cards, bro? Like seriously, like I've got players. They just maybe haven't shown themselves yet, but I've got players like that I've seen play, and I believe, like Anwar El Hadj. I picked him up a couple of seasons ago. Can't believe we didn't see more of him last season. But given the way Anderlecht played, the style, I'm not sure we'll see much of him this season either.
Stish,
It really depends.
You just won the division. Yeah, I mean,
I did. Exactly.
you know,
I did. I won the division.
respect the man.
Put some respect on the Stish's name, yeah, mate. But yeah, I do. I feel like
Reigning champion.
you do. You kind of put your money where your mouth is in this world that we're all in, right? And someone might look at my gallery and think, well, he hasn't got Martinez, he hasn't got I don't know, Wrench. He haven't got some of the like people that everyone wants. But I picked up Kenneth Taylor when no one wanted him, and now everyone wants him. When I picked up Veerman, he was putting up scores, but he wasn't like he wasn't on everyone's radar at the time. Yeah, I mean that's the game, right? Like I feel confident in the team that I've got, and if I let go of a card like Veerman, it will hamper my chances of reaching those podiums or getting in the cards. And for me, I think I'm excited for next season. I feel like confident about the collection of players that I've got there, especially in U23. I'm probably a little bit over heavy on the super rare side of things. I do think I need to pick up a few more rares, but I'm excited for the season to start. We got the big move, Gorner as well. Gorner Duafa to Salzburg was announced yesterday. I picked him up like a week ago, so I've now got like a massively, I've got a nice little Salzburg midfield stack there. I've got Luka Sukic and Gorner there. I think they probably both play. I don't know. You guys might have a view on that, but yeah, I'm excited. Are there any players that either of you are holding and just hoping this is going to be their season? Like, who in your gallery are you most excited to see this season?
You taking this one, Quinny, or is this me?
I'll let Tigers go first.
Okay. For me, first off, is I'm really excited for Hannes Delcroix because I bought his super rare and it was a big move for me, and he got injured the very same week
Oh,
before I'd even had a chance to play the guy. So it's taken me a while to build to the point where I'm comfortable to enter under 23 D3 or Rare Pro, as it's now called. So I'm quite intrigued about him. The other ones are ones that I've actually bought more recently. So I bought Nicholas Castro, who was at Newell's and has
yeah.
just joined Genk. And he is one of those ones that I'm like, oh, okay, under Vraniken at Genk, he could be an absolute beast. So I wanted to jump on that train. He's technically very gifted. He's very good at set pieces. He's also quite aggressive. High number of duels a game. I think in Argentina he was averaging like 5 defensive actions a game, which is important in a sort of pressing system that I think Franken will put into place. But the one for me, I think, is Gedson Besiktas. There's a couple of players that I think have had quite favourable moves for me over the summer. Gedson is like by far and away the one. I think like what's really interesting is how many players have aged out this season, and I don't think the market has fully realised it yet. But I'll be honest and say that there's probably only 4 or 5 midfielders that you can look at right now in the under 23 category and go, they're elite and they've got no risk of transfer. Veerman and Gedson are in that fairly select company at the top of like, you're going to get a season from them and they could absolutely crush. Gedson is one just like in the system at Besiktas versus being the only guy that was decent at Riyaspor. It's going to be a really, really big difference. The other one that I'm really excited about is I grabbed him at the end of last season when he was injured, but Odegaard, who was at RKC Valovik, has now gone to AZ.
Oh yeah.
He's one that I'm pretty excited about. And if Jeremy Doku manages to stay fit for more than 45 minutes, then I'll be very happy to have him in my squad as well. So yeah, there's a lot of like under 23 prospects, but I think what I'm quite excited about is the metas have been reset. Sinister is gone. Kochu probably goes. The teams that were like almost unbeatable at the end of last season we've had a hard reset, and there's a chance for new metas to emerge, new teams to form. And I think looking at my team at the moment, like my team will probably be like for rare will be something like Van der Voort, Badiashile, Gedson, one other midfielder. I hope Enzo Fernandez when he lands at Benfica, and then probably like Odegaard, Doku if he's fit. I've got a few options in terms of forwards. So like that to me, I'm starting to think, okay, well I've got a couple of captain choices there. I hope to be competitive. Whereas like towards the end of last season, I was like, oh, Ajax and Feyenoord have got good fixtures. How's this game week over? So yeah, I think I'm more excited about the reset of under 23 than maybe I feel like my crop of players maybe has sort of more opportunity to compete in the changing landscape.
Yeah. What about you, Quinny? Who's getting you excited next season?
Well, in terms of like who is actually getting me excited, it's anyone who's wearing a green and white hoop. To be honest, I feel like
it was coming.
well, it's yeah.
Sporting Lisbon should be a pretty decent side this season.
I need to get a Lisbon card or two for sure. I've got what's the green and white Turkish team? I've got a Konya Sport card, and I've got another one. I've got another green and white hoops from somewhere just by accident. But I'm quite heavy on Kyogo and McGregor in particular. But I was looking across my club there, and I was thinking about someone who's just not Celtic related. I'm quite excited. There's 2 that spring to my mind. I'm quite excited for a full season of fit Kieran Trippier at Newcastle.
Oh yeah,
should be on all the set pieces as the captain. Should get 90 minutes, and as long as they don't concede more than 3 goals, like he should be all right. Like, is definitely decisive capable as well. So I think he could be a sneaky I'm crossing my fingers on it. He's a fullback, so it could go either way.
I think it's a good shout. I think that's a great shout. I watched a bit of Newcastle towards the end of last season, and they've massively improved. And they brought in players like Botman, so they might pick up a few more clean sheets as well. I like that. I think Trippier's a great shout, actually.
And the other one
interesting to see that.
Is an Anderlecht kid. Well, maybe kind of an Anderlecht kid is Lucas Nemeka. So he obviously last year moved into Champion Euro. I think he did okay. He had some injuries and a wee patchy bit of form when he was fit. But I think this year, like under Kovac, like Wolfsburg could do really good. And I think he's on to start. He's beginning the German national team and stuff. You know, he is a U23 striker, well slept on in my opinion. And it's his last year at U23, so that will probably be priced into as well a little bit. But I think if everything was to go well, he should be pushing 20 decisives this year. And, you know, that's what I'm after.
Fingers crossed for you, mate, yeah.
Hope rather than expectation on that one, eh, Quinny?
What's that?
Hope rather than expectation on that one.
Hope 20 decisives, expectations got to be over 10. Like, he's got to be getting about 8 goals, 3 assists at the minimum. And then a good season, I don't know, maybe like 14 goals, 7 assists, 6 assists, you know, like.
I like it.
Get a few pens, he can do that as well. He can win a pen, you know.
Absolutely. As long as his teammate converts it, eh?
Aye, Superman.
Yeah. Talking about I was in Tekka's DMs earlier. We were discussing the specialist on the weekend, and we were looking at players and talking about players that I'm excited to see. Just doing a bit of my own research this week, and I think that it's likely we'll see Gareth Bale in an LAFC shirt against Nashville this weekend. Apparently, like a lot of the sources close to the club saying that he's going to play a part in that game. So, of course, as a holder, I've put him in my over 32 specialist because I think even if he comes in
training,
good Stish.
Yeah, I think even off the bench, I fancy him for a free kick. I think I'm excited to see him play for LAFC. To be honest, I'm happy for him to be in the MLS. I think there's been talk also this week of like Jesse Lingard potentially moving to the MLS. Have you seen all this as well?
I was just going to say on Bale, I've seen the Lingard thing as well, but I was going to say on Bale, like he had quotes come out 3 or 4 days ago, and he was saying like, "I want to be here for the next," like, you know. So he's there to play. You know, he's there to play and take it as seriously as it needs to be taken. And I think that's not to be mistaken with not taking it seriously. You know, I think there's a difference there. In America, that everyone's kind of sober to at this point. And Lingard is linked to join up with Rooney at DC United. Doesn't that sound like it's going to be a great transfer?
My brother's on holiday in Spain at the moment, and he sent us a picture message today. But the Rooney family are staying in the same hotel as him, minus Wayne. Nice. Wayne's not there, but Colleen and the kids are staying in the same hotel as my brother and my nephew and his wife. Nice. So might have to get him friendly with them at the bar and see if he's got any DC rumors that he can float our way. He's a Sorare user as well, so this might be the perfect opportunity for him to pick up some insider trading and get like strengthen his MLS selection, because he's one of those classic you know, when you get your mates to sign up for Sorare and it's like, go on, like get involved in that, and he's like, he put together a fairly decent limited side, but he's been like he's got like he's got the classic 4 rares to like scrape the ETH. And he's been sort of sitting on his hands about buying a goalkeeper for about 6 months now, ever since like he got on the platform. And he should definitely go and tap the Roonies up for a bit of insider trading information there. See if he's got any tips.
But, who else is going in your specialist team? That's the question.
Let's have a look. Right,
I've prioritised them this weekend. I think they've been massively overlooked because Sorare haven't really communicated the prices very well. So everyone's just gone, I'm going to do the other ones. Before they even launched or announced the prize pool, I went through and figured out who was DMP, and I'm like, oh, hang on a minute, we've got Pedri and Wirtz in here, so I'm probably not going to win them in a straight shootout in under 23. But if I can win them this week in specialists, then that will really, really level up my teams.
Yeah, I've actually got an entry in all 4 of the specialist over 32 and under 23s. I had to like plug a couple of gaps, And I think there's still a few spots where, like, it's particularly in the limiteds. So as it stands, my under 23 limited team is Keisuke Asako, Jalen Lindsay, who is a bit of a rotation risk at Charlotte now. I'm not sure. Probably need to consider another option there. Alexander Alvarado, Santiago Sosa, who again is a massive rotation risk at Atlanta, and Bruno Bartichotto, who I picked up today, plays in the Chilean league. He's bagged 2 decisives in his last 2 games for his new club. So I thought, like, for a bit of differential, there's not many of him on the platform because he moved shortly after he started getting minted. And I had a look at his scores and I thought, his first 2 games, new club, seems to be settled in. He's all around quite good for a forward as well. So fingers crossed he continues his run. But I do think I think that's a reasonably weak option, in that my 2 under 40 average scorers are a bit too much of a rotation risk. But then in my rare version of the under 23 is a bit stronger. I've got Tani in goal, Diviv, Brian Gutierrez, Edwin Cirillo, and Brenner. So I've gone quite heavy in there. I think Edwin Cirillo's a potential weak link there. He might not start. He plays most games, but he doesn't start most of them. So it's like, if I can plug that gap with a potential starter who might have a decisive in them, then I think that could compete. But like you said, what's it, top 60? There's currently 345 entries. So let's say there's 400 by deadline. That's a good shot, right? And this is kind of where we were at last week when we were talking about why I entered D2 U23 versus like putting a strong kind of like pro team in. And it was like, I have a unique on a week where not many unique U23s are going to play. Lehan Bomb didn't even start. He scored a goal in the 93rd minute, which pretty much scraped the win for me in the end. So yeah, it worked out nicely, and I won a great super. I say a great. The person who finished second won Luca Oyen, and it's I would have probably preferred that, but I got a Yongwoo super, so super happy. He was kind of like on my shortlist, so yeah, I mean that strengthens my teams massively. But what about you two? Who have you got back onto the subject of this specialist? Like who's in your particularly? I think it's those under 40s. They're the ones, and if you can crack those and find a player that you think can do a 50 plus, that's maybe like their averages under 40. They're the ones that can really like make or break these entries for me. Who you got, Techers? Who's in your team?
Me, I've really gone all out on this week. I even went and bought a couple of players for this week. That's how much I want to target them. My under 23 facilitator. So I've got my rare team, and I owned all but one, and then I've pretty much bought a specialist team for this week. So my rare team, I've gone for Osako because he's got a wonderful, wonderful fixture this weekend, and I really hope he can grab a clean sheet. I've got Nathaniel Santini of Sion, who qualifies because he was injured towards the end of last season, but he's been like front and center. He was their man of the match in their last friendly. So I'm thinking, okay, brilliant. Like he's under 40 point facilitator that should start. Which, like you said earlier with Jalen Lindsay, a lot of the under 40s, they're not locked in to start. So for me, when I approach these specialists, I'm like, okay, I'd rather just take a starter and bank like a 40, 45 points and let the hitters do their thing, rather than go for like a risky 60 and then have the guy not actually come in and play. So Santini's the first facilitator. The next one is just a knock-on of other transfers that have happened or about to happen. So Argentinos juniors are pretty stacked for young talent in midfield, but Florentin and Vera are both on their way out. So that has allowed Matthias Galaza to step in. Galaza's L15 is a bunch of sub-appearances where he's got like 25, and then his last 4 starts have all been like 50, 55. And I'm just like, that is like as close to perfect as you can get for these under 40 facilitators as possible. I'm rounding out the team also with Alvarado because he's got a ridiculously good fixture, and then I've gone Jesus Ferreira as my man up top. So I'm quite happy about that team. My limited version, I've gone Santini again in defence, but this time I've flipped it. So my facilitator is Franco Herrera of Newell's. So Newell's goalkeeper got injured with the last kick of the last game. Herrera's started every training session match this week, so he's in my mind pretty much a lock on to start. Risk is it's a fairly difficult fixture. It's against Racing Club, we're pretty strong, but I like, if I can, for the specialist to try and get a goalkeeper facilitator because their upside is limited. You don't want to stick your best goalkeeper in if you've got, because it's not, your upside is that they get a 70. Whereas if you can use an outfield player that could go on and bang a decent score, then that's where I try to do it. So I've got those two. Again, here, because it's limited, I've followed a similar strategy to you in looking for the differentials. Because in my mind, like the limited, I think there's 1,500 entries for like 300 prizes, but I think a lot of people are going to have the same teams. So my differential is Wilson Isidore, who was at Monaco. He was minted a few times at Monaco, about 100 limited cards, not a lot of them at all. And he's now at Lokomotiv in Russia. He should be their one of their main guys this season. So I've got him. I've got Alvarado again just because he was stupidly cheap. He was like 0.01, like it was a really like cheap entry. And then Obliakov of CSKA, he's got 90 plus scores in him. So that's my under 23s. For the over 32s, I've gone for Marwan Hitz at he was at Dortmund last season. He's now gone to FC Basel, so he's under 40, which is a wonderful goalkeeper facilitator. And you think Basel, strong team in the league, they're going to have midweeks. Like, he should be quite a useful card for me to have this season. In defence, I've gone Kim Young-Won of Ulsan because Ulsan are playing Suwon Blue Wings, who are basically going to camp 11 men behind the ball. And whenever that happens, Ulsan just play it around at the back and wait patiently for opportunity. So I think Kim could pass himself to like a 70, 80 point score. In midfield, I've gone for Shin Jin Ho, who is just absolutely ripping at the moment at Pohang. Jefferson Montero, who has had some cards from his Mexico days, once of Birmingham, I think he was. He's now playing for the 9th of October, which is one of the strangest named clubs I've ever come across in Ecuador. But he came off the bench, bagged a goal last game, I think, as a very cheap wild card facilitator that should start. He's good. And I'm rounding the team out with the boy Carlos Vela away at Nashville. So that just gives an indication as to how much I believe in the opportunity that's presented by these tournaments this week and the fact that most people in my mind have overlooked them. So I really have gone. And I can see Quinny clicking away, changing his teams as we speak. Yeah. And hang on a minute, lads. I need to get in on this specialist action before you boys walk away with a Gabby and a Wirtz.
I'm clicking away thinking, why didn't I do these again? And for all the limited ones, like I've got 3 players that are worth having, and then I need 2. And I'm not buying 2 players to fill a team. And for rare, like I can make an under 23 team, but it is weak, like super weak. There's no point even fielding it. So I will be playing into your hands, Techers. I will be overlooking this tournament, and I wish you all the best luck with it. Thank you. I've got a Galarraza card that I picked up for specialists, and I've also got. So I've got some really good cards for it, but just none of them qualify together. I've got a Rafael Romo, who's a goalkeeper, L15 under 40, but he's over 32. But I don't have, and who's our guy Galarraza? He's an under 23 player, so I just don't have the right sync up of the age groups. So I'm screwed. I'm not in them.
You need the sandwich. You need the sandwich specialist. The 2 U23s, the 2 over 32s, and 1 in the middle.
That's it.
That if we put that out there, Sorare, if you're listening, we want the sandwich specialist. The 2 over 32s, the 2 under 23s, and the 1 in the one in the
The
middle,
wild card.
the wild card. Yeah, the the literal wild card. I've just realised as well. Yeah, I've got an over 32 rare team, which I'm quite happy about as well. I think the weak link in it is Mariyama, who has a fixture against Frontale. But I've got Alfredo Talavera, who started really well at Juarez in goal. I picked up Darwin Seren, who is with Houston Dynamo. Yeah, he was cheap. I think I paid like 20 quid for him, and he facilitates that the under 40. Another one, Felipe Azevedo. He plays at America FC in Brazil. He plays pretty much every game. Doesn't hit big scores, but he might hit a 55 if I'm lucky. And then Gareth Bale. Why not? Let's stick him in there and see if he can hit some silverware, at least for me, on his debut. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those teams get on. I decided to target those as well because like I said, I had some good options. It could have been even better, if Cecinio was looking like he was going to play. I could have potentially put him in instead of Bale and had that like guaranteed potential 60 even without a decisive. But I don't think he's going to play. I feel like they're going to rest him until like they've got a little break, haven't they, after this round of fixtures? And he's apparently got like a bruised shin or something like that. And they probably just let him rest it off. So I'm not going to risk him this weekend. But excited for those. I bet you, as someone who likes to get into the stats and that, I mean, we on the podcast have been big fans of the Underdog specialist, all of that. How excited were you when they kind of like introduced those game modes? Because it really opens it up, doesn't it, to the kind of like nerding out on the stats. People who really want to dig around for a bargain to fill gaps in their team, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I think up until this point, I haven't really played Specialist Rare because it rewards super rares, and when you actually look at what you can win, the upside is fairly limited. I've had my most success in Underdog Limited because I've just been buying really cheap players. Like I won Tony Cruz Limited with a team that cost me about 60 quid. Like it was literally like nothing. Like I just put a bunch of like, really low cost cards that had been overlooked by everyone else together and ended up finishing like 6th or 7th. Like it was like, reasonable reward on that. The reason I haven't really got involved in specialists is because I didn't really have that many limited cards. But the more and more I look at what you can win in specialist limited, the more I'm really tempted into it. So this week, in making a decision to buy some players for the under 23 and the over 32 tournament, is I'm thinking, okay, well, who would be good enough that I could be using in specialists in the next couple of weeks as well? Like I want to get some, more utility out of it and really focus on these leagues a little bit more, because I think the prizes that have been coming out of some of the specialist tournaments recently, relative to the cost of composing a strong team, has been really, really good. So I'm trying not to be wasteful and just like buy random players. Like there's a real thought process to it of like, can we buy a player that can offer utility afterwards? But I think that's what I like about the under 23s, because if you look at the facilitators that you're bringing in as under 23s, mostly they are players that are just breaking into the team. So you're then catching them early and you've got the opportunity that they could be useful in your under 23 regular teams afterwards. But I love them. I think they're very good tournaments. I think it felt like for a very long time it got a little bit stale and it felt like there was nothing new. And then suddenly they've really, really upped their game and we've got a lot of variety, which I think keeps it fresh. It keeps the market moving as well, because otherwise you just set and you have your teams, and this definitely creates an element of demand around players that are eligible, which I think is great for buyers and sellers alike. And also, you've really seen some great rewards come out of these tournaments as well. Like if you look at this specialist super rare, like I don't have the cards to enter a specialist super rare, unfortunately, but you look at what's come out recently, like Hatanaka and Bale Unique were given out specialist super rare. Like there's some really, really tasty cards that have been dished out as these tournaments. And I think what I did like, and this is one thing I picked up in the baseball presentation, was that they talked about the diversity of winners as well in these tournaments, which I think is really healthy. From a very selfish point of view, you're like, I want to win all the time. But if you think long term, it's healthier for the market and general game as a whole if more people have a chance to win. And that's what I think has been really good about these tournaments, is it really rewards people that put in the time. And you can get some bargains. If you look at it, you can get some players that very, very cheaply facilitate a team. So, when I'm buying players for it, I'm always trying to go, okay, well, do my over 40 players have good fixtures this week? And if they do, can I cheaply build a team around it with these cheap facilitator players? And I think that's like a sensible way to do it, where you don't overcommit, but you're still, you're really sort of giving yourself a greater opportunity to win than maybe you would do in the open tournaments, where you're facing some quite mature stacks with high XP and that are going to crush. And I think that's actually one thing I was going to say about this weekend is I don't think I've seen anyone talk about it, but this is one huge consideration with Challenger this season, is Zenit stacks aren't going to lose their season bonus because there's no new cards. So you're going to have some absolutely meta stacks. Like you saw with YNWA in Liverpool last season, because they didn't lose their season bonus. And I think it was the same with Napoli. Like if Napoli or Liverpool did well, that you had guys that you were coming up against who were running cards at like 13% bonus. It's like half a super rare. So I think we're going to see that in Challenger this season a lot, which then is going to make, for me, the specialist even more appealing, because you might have more of an opportunity to win there than you maybe would in the regular divisions.
Yeah, it's a good shout on that, actually. Good shout on that. Yeah, the Russian league reopens this week as well, doesn't it? So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm already looking. There's definitely there's Artem Zubas already up at 10% on the market. This is, and these guys get traded all the time, so they've been, they'll have had a wee XP handicap here and there. But
isn't Zuba leaving as well? He's like training with some team, right? He's been trying to force a move out. I saw they picked up Rodrigal from Sochi, who I picked up a limited of a while ago, for like this week, with this week in mind. Like, I have like a decent sort of like challenger option for my limiteds, because I had a couple of decent limiteds for challenger. So I thought, let me just build like a really strong challenger limited side. And I picked him up, and I picked up Naboa from Sochi as well. But then Rodrigal has moved to Zenit, which is actually not a bad move. So I wasn't like too unhappy about that, because you probably get more clean sheets at Zenit as well. And according to some of the Russian Sorare community on Twitter, seem to think he'll be a starter as well. So yeah, fingers crossed for that one. But yeah, good luck on the weekend, because this sounds like you've gone in on the specialist. I'm making sure I follow you on Sorare, so I can kind of we can tick the tab to see like how the people you're following are doing in the league and that. Talking of that, actually, I saw some Twitter chat. Some of the community have set up a kind of like private Sorare data league with maximum like loads of divisions and stuff like that. I'm sure that both of you were tagged into some of those as well. That's a nice addition to the Sorare data site, isn't it? Being able to set up your own kind of like mini leagues and that.
Yeah, they've had the private league thing on for a while, but I think that this one that you're talking about is the Sorare Data World League. I've just got the tweet up from Dazar and a great team of guys behind it. And yeah, it should be good fun, because when we first got these private leagues, like, I don't think anyone was really ready to properly have a go at it. But great work on the guys for having the gumption to
get it done,
organize it. Yeah, put the tweet out, tag everyone, get it together, own it, and make it work. So fair play to them all. Round of applause to them all, and I can't wait to get involved in it. I'm in Division 2. Just because
I'm in Division 11, so I've got a few seasons before we start playing against each other. Yeah, I think I was a bit late to the party. I got tagged in a tweet about it this morning, and I think it must have been, I've been sort of travelling for work, like back and up and down the country. So when I got back in today, I was on the train, and I was like, "What is this? I've missed all of this chat." I didn't know what they were talking about, but I got tagged into a tweet, and I was like, "Yeah, that sounds fun." So by the time I got entered into a division, I'm all the way. I'm pretty much Sunday League. My team. I'm gonna have to work. It's going to be like how I used to play Football Manager, trying to bring like Crawley Town up to the Champions League or something. But yeah,
Should be good fun.
Actually, on the subject of Crawley Town and not on the subject of Sorare, did any of you see that Crawley Town got taken over by a
NFT.
kind of like the group, like the Gary V and a bunch of like crypto dons, and they did a NFT drop this week where you could like purchase an NFT that kind of got you access to like merch, tickets for the games, and obviously all of the sales of those NFTs went to funding the team. Like it goes directly into the kitty, so it's trying to raise 3 million for like the team to invest in players. And I picked up one of those. I thought that was quite cool.
I was interested. They're not that expensive, and the thing I heard them talking on a podcast. The guy that runs it, the guy that's behind it, maybe about a week or two ago, and then I seen a thing on Twitter this week, and they made this little video, and it's like kind of being like Ryan Reynolds and Wrexham a little bit, where he's like being American and talking about NFTs, and he goes into the club shop.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah,
right, Sandra, are you excited for the NFT drop? And then I buzzing, and he goes around the whole place talking about NFTs. Like, yeah, this could be an NFT, and this piece of paper could be an NFT. And he goes, he's just a caricature of the timeline that is NFT. If you get me,
it's really funny, isn't it?
I seen that the other day, and I thought that was a good chuckle, and it made me tempted to buy it. But I've just again not got around to doing it. But it's an interesting one.
A little tip out there, if anyone is thinking of getting one, that there are people like who probably like bought them hoping to like flip them for profit, that are just like cutting them loose on OpenSea for like less than the mint prices now. So you can actually pick up a little bit of a discount by going on OpenSea and getting the secondary.
Oh, of course.
I think you can like save yourself by like 0.05 ETH doing it that way. So that was what I did. I was like, I don't need to like mint one. I'm quite happy to just like support. And if you think of it in that way as well, like it means they're going to sell more than the allocation. So
yeah,
I'm intrigued. I think it's a great idea. I'm always interested in seeing how things like that kind of unfold. But when you think about things like that as well, and like going back onto this talk of the private leagues and things, it's like you can kind of see a future of like brands sponsoring like this private league because there's so much traction on it online or something like that. And it's like, hey, we'll spend a couple of grand to sponsor the private leagues, and then like the kind of governing body of the private leagues goes out and spends that on rewards that are going to be given out at the end of the league. So I think that's one of the beauties of like Sorare as a product, is that they kind of embrace third parties building on top of their API and allow people to do things like Sorare Data do, but then Sorare Data then facilitating things like this for the general public to have a go. But yeah, I think it's a super positive thing. Oh, Techers has said in the chat, look at that. Cook is injured. FYI, won't start the first game. Just what I needed to hear. Please tell me that's not a long-term injury, Techers. Is that like, I haven't seen any of that, so that's...
I was reading about it today. Looks likely that Solon will start the first couple of games. I dropped it in the chat so you had a chance to digest it quietly. But now you've broadcast to the
now
world.
I've blurred it out. But, oh well. That's all right. Hopefully we've helped someone somewhere. But you've helped me anyway, so I appreciate that. I didn't see that, actually. So it's good that I did see it, because I was already planning my my U23 D2s that were going to open up in a few weeks. If he's not going to be playing, then it's going to weaken the D3 and the res. Might be
very soon. Hang on, let me check.
We've only got a couple of weeks for Belgium.
It's next weekend.
Not long at all.
Belgium's next weekend. So next weekend we've got Austria coming online and Belgium.
And Belgium, yeah, same weekend.
Yeah, and then it's 294.
292 Scotland.
294 is Turkey. 292 is those hoopy Scots. And when is Eredivisie is 294 as well. So 294 is Turkey and Eredivisie, but Belgium first next weekend with Austria, which I'm really looking forward to, because all my challenger cards are Belgium and Austria basically. And you notice that J League isn't running next weekend because they've got the tournament. There's like
the
Cup. I seen the squad and I was like, it makes no sense on age or anything. Like, I don't get the team that they've picked. What is this tournament?
I was trying to work this out. Is it kind of like the Nations League for Asia or something? It's like really what a weird time to have it.
And then Mickey
Yeah.
Yaman, isn't it? I'm like, Mickey Yaman's like 27, you know. And
Yeah, they've got Tani out there as well.
Tanny's
Tani's
in the
out there.
team, yeah. And Osako and Zion Suzuki, is it?
Yeah.
3 like U23 goalkeepers. And then just a random smashing of, you know, the Olympic team and then a few other random guys like Yaman.
It's very unusual, yeah. I was a bit confused by that as well.
That's
Very
nothing like
strange.
that. Why did I not know about it? Why did I not understand what's going on?
I was
Yeah,
devastated because I was like, I've known I have Osako next weekend, and then I was like, oh, actually, hang on, Belgium's back on, so I've got Vanderbilt,
Oh.
so I can actually run at under 23.
Yeah, I'm
I actually
excited
think
for
I
it.
might be leaving a wee bit of under 23 action this year. I was actually doing lineup builder just before we come into the recording session tonight, and I ended up taking myself down a wee thought experiment of moving some pieces around on game week 294 or something like that. And see, with the obvious problem, not to get it back into a full podcast, as we've been going for a long enough time, but you know, how like shallow U23 mid is this year. Like there is going to be some random guys that really pop out and go, but I don't feel confident enough to say, like me looking ahead now to a month. I'm looking at maybe what my U23 options are, and I'm looking at Vanderbilt and thinking, are you maybe better going into Challenger now? You know, because I've got a better idea of what I'm fighting against. I've got a better idea of how, you know, I would measure up against other things in Challenger. But as I think that now U23, especially Pro, like I don't know, it feels like it's a difficult. It will be increasingly difficult. I think if you've still not got the right pieces, I think the right pieces become even more valuable. But I think part of the thing is at the moment is that a lot of them are unknown. We don't know who the best ones will be next year yet. Whereas
That's the exciting bit, isn't it?
last season, maybe that was less the case.
I'm like that as well. A lot of my U23s kind of can rotate into Challenger. Most of my U23s are from Challenger, apart from a few Asian cards, really, and a couple of Americans. But most of them are Challenger U23s, apart from those few and a few that moved recently, like Eric Martel, who's going to be playing in the Bundesliga, and a few of my cards have moved into like Champ. That remains to be seen. Like Champ is a bit of an unknown quantity to me until the teams start playing, and I can see how potentially strong that is. And it might be for me that like I end up letting go of some of those high tier Champ cards that I've got because I don't know if I'm going to be able to compete until the season starts, really. And it will boil down to things like, even like you said, like the Liverpool stacks. If Liverpool start the season absolutely flying again, it's almost like not worth joining in, is it?
No, not at all, man.
We're getting super close to the season now, so it's all getting pretty exciting. I know Quinny's waiting for that game week. I've seen you on your streams, mate.
I can't wait, man. 292. I've been building and rebuilding the teams like a madman. And you know, the most exciting thing that happened to me today, other than hanging out with you two gentlemen, of course, was like for 20 minutes Twitter went down. It was like pandemonium in my life. I was like, oh my God, am I being hacked? Am I being like cyber attacked now? You know, what's going on? Get my phone out. Is Twitter working on my phone? And then talking to people, what's going on? Is Twitter working? Is it me? Is it the internet? What's going on?
Oh.
How will you know if Mishu signed for Celtic or not? That was the question.
Well, on that note, I think really that's a perfect way to round us out. Techers, it's been great having you on. You've had a great what's the word? A great performance in Tony's absence. Again, Tony's going to be fighting for his place in the starting lineup once his pre-season is finished. But it was good having you on.
Still do a job in the SPL, you know.
Yeah,
the hype. Just play up to the big man.
Playing in front of Dylan Levitt, getting some points for me. Would love that.
That's it.
Quinny, always a pleasure, never a chore. And to everyone listening, good luck this week in your game weeks, and we'll be back again next week with another episode. Cheers.